Welcome and thank you for joining Save Ellis Island. We're a 501c3 nonprofit organization that is hosting this educational event as part of a series. The opinions of our speakers are their own. My name is John McGinnis and I'm Vice President of Project Management and Planning for Save Ellis Island. First, a thank you to Clan Curry for their generous sponsorship of this event. The Clan Curry gift helps Save Ellis Island to continue the rehabilitation work on the historic hospital complex. Thank you for your generosity. We're excited to have Maxinne Leighton, author of An Ellis Island Christmas, joining us tonight. Maxinne is a member of the Save Ellis Island Advisory Council. She has written for a variety of genres, author of An Ellis Island Christmas, recipient of the Marion Bennett Ridgway Award, author of creative nonfiction, He Said What? Anthology, co-author of Grand Central Gateway to a Million Lives, recipient of the Chartered Builders of the United Kingdom Silver Literary Award, co-author of Educating for Social Justice, A Dangerous Game, Matilda Joslyn Gage Center, Journal of Museum Studies. She is the co-editor of The Future of Cities, An Integrated Approach to Urban Planning, Urban Challenges, and author of the Post-Pandemic City UN Habitat 2020 for the Consortium of Sustainable Urbanization. Her doctoral dissertation in 2020 focuses on climate impactful events and post-disaster recovery in our cities and the communities. Welcome, Maxinne.
Hi, thank you for having me.
How are you?
Here, very well.
How's the snow in your neck of the wood? Is it snowy where you are?
It's snowing in New York. Well, it snowed in New York. It's not as much as I would have liked, but it's still pretty good. I love snow.
Well, it looks like a white Christmas. You made it look, it's perfect night here in the city for a white Christmas. We're going to be talking about Ellis Island and a family coming to Ellis Island around Christmas time. Yes. And there are many families did. Why don't you tell us a little about your family that you want to discuss tonight?
Well, my family came from Poland to America through Ellis Island. And a lot of this book is based on not just their story, but also on the stories of all of the oral histories that I listened to at the Ellis Island Museum. So it's a compilation of a personal story and the more universal story, and where those voices interconnect and where they're unique.
Well, the one thing about Ellis Island is there's 12 million people, there's 12 million stories, and generations of people past who've been through there are still talking about these stories. And you're going to share with us tonight a fictional story, but yet probably close to what happened to a child coming through Ellis Island.
And the importance of story, yes. And for all the children listening tonight, just remember that we all have stories, and it's important to give voice to your stories. So listen carefully. It's a cold, snowy night. It's a wonderful time to just snuggle up, have some hot cocoa, and listen to An Ellis Island Christmas. When I was 6, my family left Poland to set sail for America. My mama brought me and my 2 older brothers, Tomek and Yosef, together by the fire. She lit 2 candles and sang a song to the angels. It was the same song she sang the night Papa left home to go to America. I miss my papa, I said. Mama hugged me. She told me we were going on an adventure to a new world. Papa had found us a beautiful house with trees and flowers in the yards. She said, in America, tables are filled with food, and there are no soldiers with guns on the street. Her story sounded like a fairy tale. And most of the time we had food, but sometimes we were hungry. And every street in our village was filled with soldiers. I could not imagine this place called America. I wanted to see my papa, but I didn't want to leave my home and my friend Michi. That night we packed. We each used the sheets from our beds to wrap our clothes, shoes, a blanket, 1 toy, and 1 reading book from school. I had 2 dolls, but Mama said we had room for only 1. Only 1, I loved them both. But I took Basha because she was littler than Yola. Mama tied the 4 corners of each sheet into a knot for us. We took our big square wicker basket and filled it with some black bread and goat cheese to eat on our journey. When Mama fell asleep, I crept out of bed with Tomek and Yosef. We went near the brook and we played in the snow. and my brothers built a snowman, and I watched the bunnies run away as the stars came into the sky. I made a wish that we would be with Papa again soon. I said goodbye to my bed, my toys, and to our snowman. I cried, and Tomek lifted me in his arms. Yosef and Mama put the bundles on their back. We kissed the door, waved goodbye, and went away. Mama was crying, Tomek too. My heart felt sad. Yosef said we would never see this house again. It was cold and snowing as we walked through our village. I heard voices call out to us, God be with you until we meet again, dear friends. Good luck in America, Petroskis. We walked for days through other towns and villages on the way to the sea. My feet hurt from walking and my head hurt from thinking, Mama, are we there yet? Are we far from America? Krysia, we have a long way to travel. First, we must get to the ship. I was hungry, and Mama said I could not have any more black bread till we got on the boat. Straight ahead, I could see it. A big steamship waiting to take us to America. We walked very slowly, squashed tight among all the people, and as I looked around, I saw houses, no trees, no animals, nothing but water, and the boat that would take us to Papa. Mama, is Papa waiting for us on the boat? No. First, we must cross the ocean to get to Ellis Island in America. That's where Papa's waiting for us. People pushed as we walked up a steep plank of wood to get to the boat. Yosef pulled papers out of his pocket with our names and pictures on them. He called them passports. The men in uniform looked at them, and they gave us each a number so we'd know which bed to sleep in, and a tin plate with a knife, a fork, and a spoon. The beds were close together, one on top of the other, and the mattress was like straw our cows ate. There was no pillow, and Mama and I slept in one bed, and Tomek and Yosef slept in another. It was very cold, so Mama wrapped me in her coat to keep me warm. Is this what America was like? Oh, I didn't know, but I wanted to go home. I missed my warm bed, but most of all, I missed Yola. In the morning, a bell rang for breakfast. The food was not like Mama's. The soup was cold and salty, and the bread was white, dry, and hard. I did not like it, but I was hungry, so I ate it all. And I heard a girl talking, and then I saw her. It was Zanya, my friend from school. Mama, look at Zanya. She's going to America too. Some days it rained, and the up and down of the bouncy boat made me sick. Mama would put my head in her lap and sing me my favorite song about the angels. It sounded so pretty when she sang, and other people on the boat would sit next to her and sing too. Then I wasn't sick anymore. By the 10th day of the trip, everyone was throwing up. It was disgusting. It smelled so bad, and the water was getting rougher. And then one afternoon, the sky got black and thick like mud, and the ocean got fatter, and the waves grew taller and taller and taller as the boat rocked from side to side, and the water began to flood the deck. Everyone down to your bunks, the sailors yelled as they pushed us down below. It's dark down here, a little boy cried. We stayed downstairs in our bunk for 2 days, and every time I stood up, I fell down. We didn't eat or sleep. Maybe we would never reach America. At the end of the next night, it got very quiet, and the boat stopped swaying, and from our little window, I could see some purple and blue light in the sky. People cheered when the sailors opened the door to the deck, and the cold, salty air danced down the metal steps into our faces. The sun was just beginning to peek out of the sky, and we climbed onto the deck. Dolphins leapt out of the water, and the sun was shining, and the water was our friend again. During the day, the men played cards, the women sewed, and I played marbles with Zanya. Sometimes I'd bring my doll Basha, and she'd bring her doll Elia, and we would play house. I'd pretend that we lived in the same town in America, in a big house with a peach tree outside. Zanya's papa was in America too. Maybe my papa and her papa were best friends like us. On the 14th day, I saw a seagull in the sky. And I heard the grown-ups say we were coming closer to America. They were nervous, I was too. Would they let me into America? Would Papa be there? What would the food taste like? We could do nothing but wait. It was the day before Christmas when we did reach America. The sun was shining brightly, and Zanya and I were playing dolls, and we heard a whistle blow. Mama ran and pulled us to the deck, and she pointed. She said, "Look, look, it's the lady. It's the Statue of Liberty. We're in America. We're in America." The lady, she was big. The lady, and so many tall houses, not small ones like in Poland, and I felt so little. I closed my eyes and I saw the lady pick me up and hold me right in the palm of her hand. I could see America better now. Many people, many faces, many songs. The people began pushing as the ship came to a stop. Men in uniforms took us from the ship to a small ferry boat. I felt the salty air push against my face as the boat moved slowly to the dock. Water was ahead of me, behind me, beside me. And then I saw a red brick building with lots of windows. It was as big as a palace for a king and queen. Mama said it was called Ellis Island. And as we got closer, I saw that the building was on a little piece of land with water all around it. That's why it's called an island, Mama said, because it's surrounded by water. I wondered if it would float away. Men in uniforms took us off the boat, leading us down a long metal plank. A man with a beard was yelling, "Stay in line, move forward, take your bundles." Joseph showed him our papers, and then we walked under something long and dark, like a tunnel. And when we saw the sky again, we walked into a very large sunny room. The room seemed as big as our whole village in Poland, and it was filled with people and their bundles, men in high boots and fur caps, ladies in long dresses holding their children. It was noisy, and everybody was talking at the same time. Hurry up, this way, stay in line, stay in line." At one end of the room, there was a staircase going up, and a man in a uniform pointed his finger, and up the long staircase we went. I saw a flag. It had red and white stripes and white stars on blue, just like the night sky in Poland. I counted the stars. There were 48. I wondered if each star had a name. Tomek and Joseph went to a line for boys, and Mama stayed with me in the line for girls. She said a doctor would examine me and give me papers in English. Then I could see Papa. It was hot. I started to feel dizzy. What if I fell down? Would they let me into America? The doctor put on his glasses. He looked at my face, my hair, my neck, my hands. He poked at my eyes. "Fine, she's fine. Here are your papers," he said. The doctor pinned a ticket on my coat. Krysia Petrowski, 555 5th Avenue, Brooklyn, New York. My name, Papa's address. "Move along, little girl. Next, next." I saw a lady crying. No, I am not going back to Europe. I want to stay in America with my child." The lady's eyes were red, and the man with the beard marked an E on her back. "This E is for your eyes," he said. "You're sick and you must go to the hospital or else go back to Poland." The lady and her baby went away. Maybe America would not like me either. A bell rang and a man in white gave me milk, warm milk and 2 cookies. I was hungry, so hungry that the man gave me 3 more cookies. Then I saw Mama rushing toward me, Tomek and Yosef too. Krysia, we couldn't find you. We thought you were lost. And they sat down on the bench beside me, and I told them about the lady with the E. And when I finished my warm milk and looked out the window, it was snowing, just like in Poland. I was happy that it snowed in America too. Yosef saw a sign and read it out loud to me. Milk, 3 cents. Cookies, 10 cents. Banana and oranges, 10 cents. What are cents, we all asked. Yosef explained that just as Polish money was called rubles, American money was called dollars and cents. I will take our rubles to a man in uniform and he'll exchange it for American dollars. And when Joseph returned, he had milk, cookies, and something called a banana. Now, we'd never seen a banana before. It was long and yellow with brown spots, so I bit into it and it was not tasty, but hard like rubber. Well, you don't eat it like that, I heard the milk and cookie man say. You're eating the skin. The tasty part is inside. I hit the banana on the floor so that it would crack open. And the milk and cookie man laughed at me. Bananas are not smashed open like peanuts, but peeled. Peeled? I did not understand that. So he showed me how to pull the skin off the banana. Then he gave me what was inside. It was mushy and brown. This was good for cows, but not for people, I thought. But I ate it anyway. It was Christmas Eve, and we went to sit by the tree in the great hall to wait for Papa. The tree looked like a forest. It was so big, so green and beautiful, all covered with lights and toys. It was dark outside, but the room was as bright as the day. And above me, 3 big glass circles hung down from the ceiling. I stared into one of them, and my eyes began to blink. I had never seen anything in the night shine so brightly, except in the storybook of kings and queens. In the middle of the room, I saw Zanya's brother playing the violin. Zanya and her mama were dancing, and a chubby man with a big belly and a long white beard and red suit was laughing. It was Saint Nicholas, who had made his journey all the way from Poland to America, and it was still Christmas Eve. Reindeers must go faster than boats. The milk and cookie man came up beside me. Yes, that's Saint Nicholas, he said. But in America, the children call him Santa Claus. Santa Claus? I repeated his name over and over again. His name, Santa Claus, tickled my tongue. Then Mama took a Christmas surprise out of the wicker basket. It was my other doll, Yola. Yola, I missed you. Were you in the basket all the time? Yes, Krysia, Mama said. She was sleeping till we got to America. But Mama, you said there was room for only 1 doll. Only 1. Yes, you could take only 1, Mama smiled. But I took the other. I gave Mama the biggest kiss. Then I hugged my 2 dolls, Basha and Yola, and I lay down on the floor not far from the tree. And Mama covered me with a coat. I fell asleep. And I saw my new house. Mama was singing the song about the angels, and Tomek and Yosa were playing checkers, and I was climbing high on top of the peach tree. But where was my Papa? I cried to him. He didn't answer. Maybe he was lost. Maybe he went away. Maybe he went to Poland to find me. Voices, scary faces. I tried to wake up. Papa. I opened my eyes and I felt warm hands around my shoulders. Papa, you're not lost. You've come. You've come for us. Papa smiled. Then he pointed to some words on the wall. To New York, he read. Goodbye, Ellis Island. We are going home. The end. So now, everyone, I'm going to talk a little bit about the art of the story, because I'm hoping that there are many children on this call who would love to be writers or illustrators or painters or musicians or dancers. All of these things are the art of the story. So I'm going to tell you a little story about the level of detail a writer sometimes has to look at even after they finish their book. So you can see here, the title of the book is called An Ellis Island Christmas. The acquiring editor, Deborah Brody, was resolute about calling it The Ellis Island Christmas. And we had what turned out to be probably a month-long debate, the difference between the and an. And I thought The Ellis Island Christmas made it sound like a definitive experience, and everyone's experience going through Ellis Island was different and unique, while they may have shared similar stories. I couldn't say that this was a definitive experience for everyone. And so we then agreed that it would be An Ellis Island Christmas. An Ellis Island Christmas has been in print for more than a decade, which I'm very proud of and feel very blessed to say. So in 2018, there were so many things happening in the world, and I went back and looked at the book and felt that while the story was still true to the history, that what was really needed was an introduction that could meet children today in a way that they may not have needed to be met before, in terms of immigration and inclusion and diversity. So from that came this introduction. We are each other's keepers of stories, whether our ancestral home is across the globe or in the next state, village, town, or street. We were all born into this world with a story and a history uniquely our own. If you get really quiet, you can hear voices of other children speaking in languages you may or may not understand. These are the voices that, when you listen with your heart, become the music that sings across this country. It is through the sharing of these stories that we can begin to understand and experience the vast canvas that is America, a rich, colorful tapestry of cultural threads interwoven not just with people, but with ideas and traditions. So to those whose families have arrived more recently, and those who are still to come, welcome home. So this rather goes to the adage that even when a book is done, it's never done. The story continues to evolve. Part of working on a children's illustrated book, and I was very fortunate to work with Dennis Nolan, who is a very accomplished illustrator, and this was my first book. And it's very important that the words are really underscored by the images, and to look at the faces. So when you look at this, I had read this about her walking up the plank. You can see the person pulling the bundles up, but most critically, you could see the expression on Krysia's face. And so you begin to wonder what she's seeing and what she's feeling, and that the words that are on the page are really what's happening inside of her own mind and her own heart. Dennis Nolan and I worked very closely on the historic details on this book. At the time, I was engaged with this wonderful architecture firm, Beyer Blinder Bell. Beyer Blinder Bell and Nader Feingold and Alexander had done the restoration of Ellis Island, and I worked closely with John Bell and Richard Southwick and Nan Gutterman and Vince Bennick and many, many other wonderful architects and historic preservationists. And so what they instilled in me was a respect for history, not just my own, but the history and the cultural legacy of buildings. So when I worked with Dennis Nolan, he was of a similar mind, and he would not draw anything unless I showed him the historic documentation of the building. He wanted to make sure that it was accurate to the time of the story, as well as much down to the detail as we could, so that children reading it would really have an experience not just of the person, but of the place the person was coming into. The image on the left is kind of the waiting place where people waited to be called. And the picture on the right is the decay of that space after the building had been shut down in 1954. And the words of Gertrude Yellen, who's immigrated from Russia, really sums up the experience of probably what was going through the minds of so many people waiting. The word America in those days was the wish, the dream, and the hope of every person. We called that the Golden Land. It was the desire of every human being to reach the gates of the Golden Land. As a child, I remember relatives in my family telling me that when they came to America, they actually believed that the streets were paved with gold. So they were looking for the gold on the streets, but they soon found out that that was not the case. People wrapped their baggage, their belongings, in whatever they had. And this was very often what you would see when luggage was being moved off the boat. And this is another quote from Gertrude Yellen. I remember we had good times, we had bad times, we had all kinds of things, but that hope is to be in America was so great that it colored all the pain that we had during our trip. Of course, there was lots of trouble and suffering, but there was a light within, in the soul, that gave us courage to go on. And I think that what's particularly moving and important here, and something that is, we all try and hold on as a positive thing throughout generations, is that no matter the circumstances, no matter the difficulties, that there is a light within all of us. It is a light within our souls. And that's what we draw upon and gives us courage, not only for us to go on, but it gives us courage for others to go on once they see that light within us. And so this is particularly moving to me from Gertrude. This is the Christmas scene. And this image, historic image on the right, is really inspired me when I was writing the text and the story for in the book about Christmas. There were children here assembled, many of whom had never seen a Christmas tree with ornaments, and certainly for many, electric lights was a new experience, and they were all being given gifts, and it was really a magical time. And so the expression on Krysia's face is really to look at the magic and to think about where she now was and what she's also left behind. So that was a little bit of the history and some of the narrative. And I wanted to share that with you because it shows the correlation between really looking at your history, experiencing your history, but also starting to understand other people's history. It gives you a lot of insight into yourself when you find out your own roots and your own generational story. But it really changes you when you can really embrace and understand other people's stories. And that's part of the process of writing. Hi, John.
Hi, welcome back to me. Maxinne, it's a great story. And you're working at Ellis Island. One thing people have to understand is the people who came through Ellis Island weren't writing memoirs at the end of their life. They likely wouldn't find themselves in a history book. So we rely a lot on historic fiction to kind of help stories really resonate with what it was like through Ellis Island. That's why your book is wonderful, because other books don't talk about the children, even though many of the oral histories were of children who are telling their stories years after they had passed through. But even their memories were somehow lost on some of that. So that's why we love books like yours, because it fills in, it gives people a sense of what it was like for even a child. to leave home, to walk across Europe, to board a boat, to have that long journey, and then to come to Ellis Island. So it's a wonderful book.
Thank you.
And it's great that it's wrapped around the holidays, which is where now, so it brings that to that point of saying, what inspired you to write this story?
Well, what inspired me was, you know, in every family, there's one child who's quiet and listens more than they speak, than she speaks, and that was me. I was quiet and I was a listener, and I listened to a lot of different stories, and in many ways, I became a keeper of those stories, not just for me, but for other members of my family. And so I was with those stories. And then when I started working on the Ellis Island project at Beyer Blinder Bell, the story started becoming alive to me. I had taken some visits to the island with the team, and walking through the building before it was restored, you could almost hear the voices and feel the presence of the people that had been there before. And I just felt driven to write this story. And I remember when I started, because I had never written a book before, everyone told me that it was a pipe dream, and you know, you just don't wake up one day and decide you're going to write a book. But what I had learned from other writing I had done was that you trust the story and you trust the characters. And that if the story is strong enough and there's a real interconnectivity between yourself and what you're talking about, and there is a personal that can transcend to the universal, then anything is possible in terms of writing something that will reach and touch others. The other thing that was really interesting for me about this was listening to all the oral histories. I mean, after I decided I was committed to doing this, and I talked to members of my family, and I did recordings of them speaking about their time, I went to Polonia in Chicago because I really wanted to see what the Polish community was like outside of New York. And then I came back, and Diana Pardue from the Park Service had given me access to the oral histories. And so I went and I spent hours, I can't even remember how many oral histories I listened to. And there was one oral history that just really, really touched me and influenced my story. It was the history of an elder woman who was probably in her 80s. And she started out, and when her voice started out on the recording, she sounded like the elder that she was. And as she began to tell her story, she told the story of this doll that she had when she was on the ship with her mother. And she would love to go on the deck, and she would take the doll and she would make it go down the railing, and then like it was almost, you know, just running it up and down the railing. And she'd laugh and she'd giggle. And as the woman is telling the story, it's as if her age is melting from her, and you could hear the young child's voice coming through. And she said at one point, her mother just got so annoyed that she kept playing the same thing over and over again. She said, if you don't stop it, I'm going to take your doll away. And she's 5 years old, so she kept playing. And her mother took her doll and she threw it in the ocean. And the woman telling the story started sobbing like she was that 5-year-old child. And several things happened. There was a universality to that story. However, I could not change the experience for that woman. But when I heard that story, I made the determination that I would change that experience for the little girl in my book. And it wouldn't change her life, but somewhere on some level, it changed something for someone. It gave them back their joy as opposed to taking it from them.
you shared that story with me yesterday, and I was very moved when I heard it, because I felt like the woman telling the story and being a child and having that wound that still is there, that lost just a simple toy. And all of a sudden last night I remembered losing a toy, losing my Matchbox collection of cars as a child, and I'd forgotten that story for years. And Christmas time is always a great time to start to think about, as a child, and the special gift, and certainly the story provides a special gift, a real simple gift that is real special. And I love that part of the story. It's just a wonderful ending, and when you connected it to something happening in real life, it's just made it more
That's
magical.
what inspired me. And I would say to all of the children on this call who want to write or be artists, that these are the kinds of things that inspire you.
Yeah.
And when I say artist, I also mean no matter what you do in life, you're an artist. Architects, engineers, they're artists. And so they apply their knowledge and their craft to something they love. And whatever they're doing, they're creating a story from it.
Well, that leads really a good question. What is the process for you in writing a book?
Well, it always starts out really happy. And it starts out because there's a character and there's an idea and there's an excitement. And it's like you're getting to know the character, and you're sort of feeling it through, and what they feel like and what their experience is. And there's a curiosity, there's an excitement about where you're moving together, where you're going together. And then you start to write. And in my case, at first it seems like, oh, it's all here. The story's coming through, the voice is coming through. And then you realize that it's like peeling an onion. Mm-hmm. And there are layers upon layers upon layers. And there's writing and rewriting and rewriting. And there's a lot of, at a certain point, some of the things you might have loved the most in your book when you're working with an editor, you have to let go of. And so it can be a very arduous process, but even in the most arduous of times, there's a lot of joy, because you're giving voice to ideas and to experiences that you hope will be able to resonate with other people.
Now, you've written books for a very diverse group of books. What is it like to write for an adult versus writing for a child? And is there a difference in how you tell a story?
It's very different. And having just finished my doctoral dissertation, that was another kind of writing, which was probably the most challenging writing I've ever had to face. It was very different than anything I had ever done before. So the difference is that I'd say what's the same for all the genres is you need to find the authentic voice. And that's part of what takes time. You may think you found the voice, but it's really a very organic process. And at some point, you have to let go. Mm-hmm. You have to let the voice lead you. And that's for both children and adults. In writing in this book, while I used my mind, it was very experiential and very driven by my heart. In some of the adult work, the mind would be more in charge, and then I'd have to filter in more of the heart and the feeling. So it just varies. It really varies.
When do you kind of know you got it, that you kind of refined it down to where I don't need to refine it more, I got the story, I got the characters?
I don't think I ever feel like I got the story, I got the characters. To me, it feels like they're fluid, that they're living. And so they may be on the page and it may be in print, but it's still an evolving story. So it never feels finished to me.
Now, do you Do you have any advice to any children who are interested in being a writer?
Yes, I would say write words, write stories, listen to what's going on in your families, talk to your siblings and other members and your friends. Uh, just let your imagination go, pretend. If there's somebody you want to be or someplace you want to go, write a story about it, even if you don't know. Just think about the wonder and the joy and the fun, and see what comes through. And just know the most important thing, whether you decide to be a writer or not, is to remember that you have a voice, and that's the most important thing. And how you choose to use it, you'll know in time. In the meantime, just let your imagination go free.
Yeah, I have a screenwriter's son in the other room here, and I tell him you have to listen to people. You can't find things on TikTok or on the internet. You really have to watch people, listen to them, interact, find diverse groups of people.
But you know, it's interesting you're saying that, because I think something like TikTok would be another way of listening and observing and experiencing. It's just a different kind of dimensionality. It's a different kind of experience. It's learning to meet people in a different way, just like we're doing this on Zoom. And all the other readings I've done in person. So while it's a different experience, it also gives the opportunity to connect in a different way, to feel yourself and how you experience yourself with each other in a different way. So it's something to think about. And I think that also because those are so much of mediums that children are growing up with. The way in which you write and experience, you should be mindful of that as a writer, because it is how you listen and how you see the world.
And are you thinking about writing any more children's books?
I'm thinking about, just as I was so influenced in terms of architecture, I've really been incredibly influenced over the past 5 years by engineering, and finding a kind of poetry in that as well. So I've been thinking about several ideas. One has to do with issues around climate change for children. And also, this influenced me from my dissertation that I really would love to be able to share with children. I'd like to do a book for children on land acknowledgement, and having an understanding of the native people that have been on the land, like the island of Manhattan and different places throughout the country. So there's an understanding of land acknowledgement by children. And it's another way of understanding a history that has so much been forgotten and is so important. And with children being particularly impacted by climate change, things around land acknowledgement is a positive way of remembering who came before, but also the meaning of the land that they're on. So those are some of the things I'm thinking about.
For anyone who's interested in asking Maxine questions, certainly enter some your questions in the chat. Someone was asking, have you ever been back to Poland where your relatives are from?
That's a great question. No, I haven't. I actually was hoping that when I finished my dissertation and got my PhD, I was going to travel for a few weeks and go to Poland, but I did all that in the middle of a pandemic, so.
Yes, it has been in the news. How long did it take you to write your book and edit it and illustrate it? Let's kind of walk us through that process.
It was probably a 4-year process. Oh. So it started out with the cover I showed you before, and when I started, I really didn't understand the process. And then when I finally was able to find an agent, Theron Rains, he gave me some advice about how to prepare the book, which an agent will often do. So I did some rewrites. What happened after the book sold was that it sold as a picture book, but the editor said, you know, it's great that we bought this as a picture book, but the market has changed. So now we're going to ask you to take this story and write it as a chapter book. And I said, this character's voice is not going to hold a chapter book. And she said, well, you're going to have to figure that out, because that's what the market is bearing right now. And I spoke to my agent there and said, you're going to have to do it. That's it. So I spent the next year rewriting, and rewriting. And all these new characters developed, and handed it in. And the editor called me and she said, you know what? You were right. This is not working. Let's go back to the other book. Let's go back to the picture book. So what we did is we went through the edits, and then we started again. And so things that had happened in the chapter book then got translated back into the picture book. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Do you see writing an adult version of this book? They've grown up in America.
I actually started a novel a number of years ago, and it's called The Life and Times of Annie Verrazzano. And it's been sitting there for a while. And in many ways, that book picks up. It also starts out with an immigrant story, and that book picks up where this book leaves off, and it just continues throughout Annie Verrazzano's life. So as you can tell, growing up as a child of immigrants really has impacted me on so many levels, and it is thread throughout so much of the work that I do. And even if it doesn't necessarily focus on immigrants and immigration, it focuses on intergenerational grief, intergenerational joy, what gets passed down, and that kind of exploration.
Now, do you see the parallel of grief of leaving the old world and the grief of climate change?
Yes, very much. And it's all about home. And I would say that if I were to reflect on one of the themes for me in all of my writing, even if it's not explicit, it is about coming home, whether you're coming home to a place or losing home, coming home to yourself, or having lost yourself and recovering yourself. That the whole element of home and the grief of leaving what you have behind and facing into climate change, where there is climate grief, because whether it's the loss of home, the loss of place, the uncertainty, it's not too dissimilar to what people are experiencing now, being in the middle of a pandemic. There's a loss of a home, changing how you work, that you're working from home, you're not going into office. People you work with are like members of your family, if you're lucky like I am, and being in a wonderful firm that creates that kind of environment. So it's, yes. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, it did. I mean, it's interesting, the connection. I mean, we're going through this crazy time, and it's raising new issues and new things people think about that we never thought we'd be entertaining. It creates a discussion.
But the other thing is, so that we don't leave this kind of hanging, is that what happens in that process as people start to realize where home really is.
What's important.
Yeah, what's important, and finding that piece of home in yourself, as well as prosaic and corny as that might sound, but that you take that with you wherever you go. And that displacement is very difficult, even if you choose the displacement. It's a passage and it's a journey.
Well, someone asked the question, I think, I was thinking about myself, when's the movie coming out?
Well, is the movie?
The movie coming out, is it really, it's a great children's story that adults can connect with.
Well, if anyone out there is a movie producer and is interested, please reach out to me.
Or if you're out there.
Yes.
All right. Well, if anyone has any questions for Maxinne before we say goodnight.
Well, I just want to thank everyone. You've been a very generous audience, taking all this time and listening to the story and listening to our conversation. And I just want to encourage everyone on this call to speak your voice and just follow your heart.
Well, Maxinne, thank you very much for joining us tonight and spending some time and reading the book, and a wonderful book. And we all wish you a happy holiday and a healthy and happy 2021.
Thank you. And to all of you, thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you for participating in this wonderful event tonight. We're so grateful to Maxinne Leighton for joining us. Thank you again to Clan Curry for their sponsorship of this event. Visit our website at saveellisisland.org to become a member today. Learn more about the restoration work being done and ways you can help save this national icon and preserve a history for future generations.